Now that I'm rested and fed, I can get back to this. I've got a rig with me. I got to switch to my camera on my phone to get a lot of these shots underneath. I've got some lighting equipment. I'm going to help to see everything underneath there so I can show you what's there to disconnect. Put myself a big tarp down so I got something to lay on. It's not just in dirt. I still have the front take off, the exhaust, and the intake. So there's a mount that comes off the power steering line. There's a bracket that mounts onto a bracket that's on the intake manifold. And I want to disconnect that way when we go to take the intake off, it won't be on it. So under the back here, so here's where the oil filter is. There's the intake up there. We've got a nut here. We've got one up in between here. Above the oil filter right here. So I'm gonna need to undo the wiring harness loom from the intake manifold. There's one bolt there. There's one I can get from the top that's over there. We've got this bracket that runs from the bottom of the intake manifold down to the back of the block to support it. There's a wire right above the oil filter that goes to the oil pressure sensor or NOx sensor, depending if you're OBD1 or OBD2. This is just for the pressure light. This heater hose right here goes to the idle air control valve, and this hose right here goes to the heater core, which technically don't have to remove that one to get this job done, but I'm gonna replace it anyway. For the wiring loom bolt, just went underneath here with a small ratchet with a 12 mil and undid it. And right here, I want to undo this one for the intake manifold. I just stuck a ratcheting wrench on there and turned it. You have a little bit of leeway to move the pipe to get to it. So you could probably fit a ratchet in there, but I just used a wrench. It was good enough. Okay, so I got everything on the bottom disconnected except for the coolant hoses. And I found a ground. There's this main ground right here that you've got to disconnect before you remove the intake manifold, or it'll rip it off. There's a sensor hiding right about here, right there on the back of the intake. So before you pull it, make sure to disconnect that or you'll rip it straight off. Had to remove the idle air control valve off of the back of the intake because there was a bracket retaining the wiring harness. Yeah, I'd say that's clogged. That screen is dirty as hell. I'm gonna pull the intake off now. Everything unhooked. All that's left is the fasteners on the top. I'm gonna pull it with the fuel rail on it and move all of our electronics out of there. Alright, now we pull.
There's a wire attached.
Yeah, there's a bracket. Oh.
Oh, it just popped out.
It slipped in. There we go. Yep, the motor mount is the one with the solenoid on it. So now the intake manifold's off. This will allow me to get the hose clamps off of the hoses and pull the hoses from the top so I don't get covered in coolant when it comes out inevitably. I can get to this sensor a whole lot easier and keep from breaking it. This is the coolant pipe that goes on the back of the block, which goes up to the back of the water pump. Okay, so I got everything disconnected over here. Water pipes left. There's a bracket. Right here there's a weld with a bracket that runs down. There's a bolt that bolts to the block right below it. There we go. There's that. Alright, now I'm just going to pull the pipe back and turn it slightly. And there we go. Now we got the water pipe out. Surprisingly, the O-ring on the water pump side looked a lot better than on the thermostat side. This is disgusting, and it's going to be cleaned and painted. I was wondering why these rear motor mounts cost so much, because I was thinking they were the size of a Civic rear motor mount. They're not. They're like the size of 3 Civic rear motor mounts. And this one's got an adaptive solenoid on it. Anyway, this valve, what I thought was an EGR purge valve, it's actually a motor mount adaptive vacuum valve. The computer controls whether you're sitting still or you're accelerating and adjusts the rear motor mount accordingly. Considering how big that is, and considering I'm already in here and I'm going to be in here for a little while, I think I'm going to go ahead and get another one of these just to be safe, because this would be a lot of work to redo and a lot of parts that would just get thrown away practically just to replace this. So here's the intake manifold after it came off. It's pretty nasty on the inside. There's a lot of carbon everywhere. Normally the best practice to do on this type of work before you start is to set top dead center. That way when you take the engine head off, it's at top dead center. You don't have to worry about anything. It doesn't really matter for me because this head's going to come off and I'm going to redo it anyway for later use. And I can set top dead center on the motor after the head's off anyway. Next thing's going to be taking the exhaust off, and then we'll take the front of the engine off. I still got cleaning I have to do on the engine head that's going in here, but I've already got all of the nuts loose on the exhaust manifold. There's a bracket right here that we have to get, and then there's the bolts that are on the bottom of the manifold. There's 3 of them in a triangle pattern right down here. See, under here there's nut here and nut here. One up there, a little bracket down here. Now we just take the manifold off. Alright, manifold comes off. Stuck. There it goes. And you can really see there's a lot of smut on both sides that didn't have proper fastening, where the studs were snapped off or whatnot. There's a clear picture of what's going on there. Smut coming out the side, a lot over here. Now we can move on to taking the wheel off. 19mm and dirt it down. Hell yeah. We're going to take the crank pulley off. I have a special tool for it. You don't need the special tool as long as it comes off. You can take the crank pulley off with a 19mm. I like these. This is a weighted centrifugal socket. Makes it so if they're difficult, they come off really quick. Mine's been off within the last year and a half, so it shouldn't be too hard. But I always use this one because it's like really finely cut. It'll reduce the wear on the crank and the pulley. There it goes. Gonna take the crank pulley off because we're gonna need to take the timing cover off. So down this comes. Now we can get all the timing cover bolts off. There's one here, I know there's one right above, one over there. You just kind of work your way around. I'm only running a lower timing cover, so this should be a breeze. These are all 10mm. Okay, now we're gonna go up top. Usually have one here, mine was broken. Got this side free. Should be one more on the back, and it's kind of a pain to get to. I don't think I'll be able to get a shot on it. Now the cover can come out. I'm going to take the dipstick tube off. I'm going to push the cover down and out the bottom. Like so. Okay, so I don't have a balancer belt on my car because the balancer shafts felt a little weird, and tried setting them up right. It was just more of a hassle than it was worth, and I don't want any bearings on the balancer shafts failing while my car's going down the road. I don't need it. It gave me a whole lot more pep taking the balancer belt off, and it makes it a whole hell of a lot easier to work on instead. One thing I will be doing is, there was a technical service bulletin on the balancer shaft seals, and a while back put a retainer in on this one to keep it safe, but I never got the ability to put the seal in because this gear is in the way. So we're going to be getting to that. But first I'm going to go ahead and take the timing belt off. So timing belt tensioner is a 14. Put it on from the top. Break it loose this way. So I still have to use the balancer belt tensioner pulley on it as a spacer, basically. We take this off. We can loosen it enough to slip this belt off. So now the belt's free. Now I have to block the engine and take the motor mount off to get the belt off. And what we'll do is we'll slip the new belt around there and then put the motor mount back on real quick. When you support the engine, you want something smooth for it to sit on. I'm going to be using a jack and a block of wood just to hold it. That way it doesn't damage the oil pan. And you just want it supportive, you don't want it pressing down. So motor mount bolts are 17s. Gonna zip this one on the side here. Like so. I'm going to pull that out. Engine mount will come up. It's got a ground connected to it. Just going to lay it out of the way. Just going to pull this balancer pulley off. I'm going to pull it off and out. I'm going to bring the belt off. So I just slipped the new belt over. This is the belt that I bought for my Vtec swap. It's got a different number of teeth on it. It's a Beck Arnley 026-0339. So if it's a F22B1, F23A1, so if you're converting to Vtec, that's what you'll want. We slipped the belt over so it'll be easier to work with and we won't have to do this again. So I took the engine mount off, took that belt off, put this belt on, and we're lining it up to mount the back up. Again, this is on low. Okay, now we'll turn it back up. Would you look at that? I actually got a sticker. It's the maintenance record sticker. And boy, does it look faded. While the engine's still supported, I think this will be a good time to take a look at my balancer gear issue I was talking about. So right here is the balancer gear. And I want to change the seal that's behind here, but I can't get to it. It's got a hole in it in the shaft. You're supposed to be able to hold it, see that you can crack it loose. I've tried it before with no success. Maybe I can try it again and we'll see what happens. I'm going to attempt this again, see if I have any success on it. Didn't last time. I'm going to get a screwdriver I don't care about and shove it in there, and we're going to see if we can get that gear off there. This has a really good handle. I get at this with a ratchet and see what happens. Maybe I'll get lucky. It's got a screwdriver through. It's sitting on top of the AC compressor. I'm going to try to give it hell and see what happens. Either the bolt will break loose, the bolt will snap off, or it'll shatter the screwdriver handle. Let's see what happens. It snapped the screwdriver in half. Clean in half. So it's going to take more than that. I'm wondering if I can get a pipe wrench on it. Oh yeah, pipe wrench feels like it could do some shit. pipe wrench. Pipe wrench works. Pipe wrench works, everyone. Holy crap. This is how you remove a stuck bolt on a balancer shaft pulley. Right here. It's the balancer shaft gear. Put you a 12mm socket on it. Put a pipe wrench on the back of that shaft. Put a jack handle on this and turn it. Brace this against the AC compressor on this reinforcement piece. Give it hell, it'll break loose. Pipe wrench for the win. Let's get this sucker off of here. I've been trying to do this for the last couple years. And that's what did it. Does the gear come off? It comes the heck off. Excellent. Good old pipe wrench.